Welcome to Football Never Sleeps, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. We're still aspiring to be viral. We're way over caffeinated, and now we're a proud weekly sponsored YouTube show all about Notre Dame football, and stumbling through this opening, but knowing that the fans are making up new puns about Chris Ash. On tonight's show, we're going to talk about Marcus Freeman's response to Saturday's heartbreak. With Tyler James in Laporte, wondering if that alcohol policy paid off Saturday night, me and my TV clothes spill. We'll also talk about the quarterback position and how it's evolving. And of course, we're going to talk about the defense. We've got injury updates. We got recruiting intel from a big recruiting weekend. And of course, your questions, quips, and comments. So start filling up that question portal. This is Football Never Sleeps.
All righty. Can you believe it's already Monday night, Eric?
It is. I'm definitely over caffeinated. I have some left over from Saturday/Sunday.
All right. Well, Football Never Sleeps is presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Huddle up, football fans. Tailgate season is here, and nobody gets you ready for game day like Academy Sports and Outdoors. Swing by your local Academy store or shop online at academy.com to find everything you need, from grills to jerseys and more. Be a watch party legend with gear from top brands like Nike and Under Armour, all at unbeatable prices every day. With 8 Academy stores across Indiana and a new store coming soon to Mishawaka, fun can't lose, and neither can you. Gear up today at Academy Sports and Outdoors. We really appreciate the support from Academy Sports and Outdoors. We appreciate the support from everyone who tunes in to watch us live and tries to bear with us as we bear with the start of this football season for Notre Dame, which has not gone the way any of us has expected. If you're new to the proceedings, make sure you're subscribed to us here on our YouTube channel. Make sure you like the video, send us comments during the show. We'll get to questions throughout. We're on our way to 5,000 subscribers on this channel, so we appreciate anyone that does like, subscribe, comments, and shares our content, because it helps us out a lot. And want to remind folks something I mentioned last week, a deal for new subscribers to blueandgold.com. We're offering $1 per week for an entire year. So you can purchase an annual subscription to Blue and Gold for just $52, which is more than half off the regular price. Head to blueandgold.com, hit the Join Now button at the top of the page, and you can take advantage of that deal. You don't need a promo code or anything. It's right there for you. We've also included a link in the description below to the subscription page if you can't find it, but it should be pretty easy. If you go to blueandgold.com, go to Join Now. I think it's a light green button, and you'll be able to sign up. All right, we will start our conversation with Marcus Freeman's press conference today, Monday. He spoke with reporters following the 0-2 start for the Irish. As expected, I don't think Marcus Freeman fielded a single question about Purdue, though he did include the Boilermakers in his opening statement, who the Irish play on Saturday. There's just way too much to discuss about what Notre Dame needs to fix after its own first 2 losses. What were your biggest takeaways, Eric, from Freeman's press conference?
I thought he did a pretty good job of dancing between kind of telling us what the defense needs to do to be fixed, to get it to the next level, and not coming up with an identifiable scapegoat. I thought he did a good job of that. And I thought there were some interesting themes there. Jack Sobel asked him a really good question about the defensive line, wrote about it. Check that out at blueandgold.com. The flip side of that was there were some questions about CJ Carr and some really interesting answers. And I think we'll get into this later in the show, but his evolution is really interesting, how he's done through his first couple of games. And to me, I think he could be part of the solution, even if Notre Dame's defense doesn't become elite. As it's improving, I think he can be part of the solution. So those were kind of the 2 biggies for me. How about you?
Yeah, I think he handled it as best he could. There's not much you can say to make things better. You know what I mean? Like, the play is the only thing that's really going to make things better. I know, obviously, there's folks that may suggest people losing their jobs may make things better too. But I think he's been pretty honest about the issues at hand, sort of without putting anyone on the railroad tracks. I think Kyle Kelly pointed out that I'm not sure that Marcus Freeman said Chris Ash's name specifically today during his press conference. So I think it seemed pretty clear. His opening statement today seemed like he had like very obvious bullet points that he wanted to address, which I don't know that I get that. I mean, I think he comes in with notes, but it felt like, hey, these are things that I really want to reinforce coming out the gate. So I thought that was interesting. And yeah, like sort of the tap dancing that you mentioned in terms of like, how do you talk about what's going wrong without making everyone look like losers is a little
and there is an art to that. I mean, not every head coach has pulled that off that I've covered at Notre
Dame. Marcus Freeman did not fully commit to personally spending more time working with the defense, but he indicated that he will if that's what is necessary. Maybe reading between the lines here, do you think he will be spending more time with the defense in practice?
I think he will. I think he just didn't want to say, hey, and put Chris Ash in a bad light. I think that's what good coaches do. Good head coaches, they're not just CEOs. They don't just coach their coaches. They get involved. They're fixers. Good coaches are fixers. Great coaches are fixers. And that's where this team needs most of his attention right now. Not on the quarterback, which we thought might be the case back in August, whoever it was going to be. And this is Marcus Freeman's expertise. So I expect him to be very involved with the meetings and be very involved with the coaching of the defense. I mean, he's had to fix his own problems at Notre Dame back in 2021 when they gave up 38 points in their opener and then gave up 29 to Toledo the next week. Then they got things humming. And so I think that's a very good thing for him to do. That's what my expectation is. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say great coaches are fixers. I would agree with that. I think what maybe separates, at least maybe from to date, what separates Marcus Freeman maybe from being a good coach to a great coach is that it doesn't seem like, based on the way seasons have started, that he anticipates the issues as well as some of the greatest coaches. Like I think if you are a great coach, you fix those issues before we find out about them, right? Like, not to say that a great coach is going to be able to prevent all the issues that are going to happen in the game of football. That's how football is played. And he seemingly trusted that this defense would be better than it is. And now it's incumbent upon him to make sure that it gets fixed. And so I would be surprised if he's not spending more time with the defense and figuring out how to get things aligned better, whether it's the play calls or the execution or the personnel. There needs to be better alignment with all those things to make this defense better, because especially with some of the guys out there who aren't playing their best, we've seen better from them. And so that suggests that they are capable of more, and Notre Dame has to figure out why they're not maybe reaching that potential.
Well, I think that's a valid point about not anticipating it. Had I had a third question today, and I would have asked him, what have you learned in your 4 preseasons about identifying these things in August rather than in September? Because he's been pretty good once they're out there in games. And I realize there's some things only game action is going to give you answers to, but the distance between where he thought the defensive line was going into the Miami game and where it is now is a chasm. And that process is something I think he'll have to look at in the offseason. Why did the preseason not reveal that better?
Yeah, I mean, we talked most of the offseason about the interior defensive line, especially, is like, that's a question mark. And then when he ends the preseason saying, hey, I'm fully confident in these guys. Jason Onye's had as good of a fall camp as any defensive lineman I've coached. and those kinds of things. You're like, well, I mean, maybe that won't be as big of a question mark, but I think so far we've been proven, our initial perception has been proven correct, and to see Marcus Freeman to be so wrong in that was interesting. And I know Jack Sobel, our teammate, asked Marcus Freeman about that today, and I don't remember if it was a great question or good question, but Marcus Freeman got a compliment, or Jack Sobel got a compliment from Marcus Freeman for that one. Freeman continued to
I wasn't coughing at your answer. I drank too much coffee in one gulp.
Marcus Freeman continued to suggest that execution is what's gone most wrong with the defense rather than the play calling of their scheme. How true do you think that is?
Well, I think he also qualified that the reason they might not be executing to the standard is they're not being coached to the standard. I think I think there's things that they could do better schematically that I remember Al Golden doing that were successful that I haven't seen done this year. And I also think I agree with our podcast guest from last week on 3rd and Goal, Rocky Boyman. This team looks hesitant. And usually when you play hesitant, it's because you don't understand all the nuances of where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing. So I think that the truth kind of lies in the middle of those two things. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's partially true that the Notre Dame defenders are not executing well, but I think that is in part because they're maybe being asked to do things that maybe they don't do well.
Right, because it's a lot of it's guys that played at a higher level last year.
Yeah, and so, like, I mean, there are plays out there. It's like, okay, just tackle the guy. He's right there. Like when we know they can tackle, and that's a player mistake. I think, I mean, even say the game-winning touchdown pass, like Drake Bowen is in defense there. People can question whether Drake Bowen should be on the field or if he should be in coverage there, but he just has to play that better. He can't give up inside position in that situation, and I'll give the tight end such free access to the ball. And that's a mistake. And so it goes both ways, I think. But I do think that to me, it seems more coaching based than player based in terms of how we got here. One thing Marcus Freeman did say, and not the only thing, but one thing he did say that was improved was the offensive line. And he said it was much, much, much improved from game 1 to game 2. Do you agree with that?
I think there were too many muches in that sentence, but I do think it was improved. I think Billy Schrauth had a kind of game that I would expect from Billy Schrauth. Overall, I'm looking at the Pro Football Focus grades for collective pass blocking and collective run blocking. Run blocking was pretty similar, a little bit of a improvement. Pass blocking was more than 40 points higher. So that would be much, much better. To the eye test, they look better, but I also know that Miami's defensive line was better, had better players on it. So I would say all in all, I'd be happy that there was incremental process and really eager to see more of it. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with the too many muches. I would have probably maybe much improved would have probably been fair. I do think the offensive line play was better. I did think the pass protection on the field, regardless of what the grades say per person, like I thought the pass protection was better. I think there is still room for improvement with the run blocking, particularly with backside run blocking. I think A&M was very aggressive in shooting some gaps on the backside to be able to make some plays. In Notre Dame, I think, fixed that a little bit as the game progressed. Still giving up too many tackles for loss in the backfield. So I think there needs to be better communication across this offensive line. But I think there were some promising signs. I don't look at the grades and say, okay, this offensive line is screwed. Like I think Notre Dame's offensive line is showing progress. Although I think there certainly are plenty of things that can get better at. It's not a dominant offensive line yet, which is what some of us expected it could be this year. And it's not anywhere close to that yet, but it did, I think, improve from game 1 to game 2.
I not to single out an individual, but I guess I am in doing this. I am surprised that Anthony Knapp hasn't played better, and I
Yeah.
realize they've been two good off or defensive lines, but he faced guys like that last year and kept improving. And I was talking to somebody today that had a conversation with a coach that hasn't coached against Notre Dame, but has watched Anthony Knapp because they tried to recruit Anthony Knapp and were really sad when they didn't get him. And they are surprised. They don't feel like this version of him as a sophomore is better than last year's. So we'll have to see if we begin to see some improvement against Purdue on Saturday.
All right. I wanted to get into the injury report that we received from Notre Dame today with maybe some more bad news. Notre Dame listed 3 players as questionable on Monday's availability report. So we'll see how many of these guys actually are available come later in the week. First up, nickelback Devontae Smith is questionable with a right ankle injury. He missed the Texas A&M game unexpectedly, apparently tweaked that ankle in the pregame warmups. How badly do you think the Irish need him to get back out there?
They needed him last week. I mean, that's as good of a slot receiver as they'll see all year, and he had 207 yards and receptions and played all over the field. But they need to get him back because he's their best option. And Notre Dame has really relied on those transfer portal experienced nickels to be a big part of their number one pass defense. They're right now number 103 in pass efficiency defense after being number 1 the last 2 years. So yeah, I think that's a big want to get him back kind of thing. And Carson Hobbs, I mean, I expect him to improve over the course of the season, but Notre Dame's defense has so little margin of error between coverage mess ups and not getting pass rush. Those are not good recipes for improving your pass defense.
Yeah, I think I like Hobbs and his potential. I think he's probably not someone who should be relied upon to play a full game like that. I think he, as a young cornerback, could use some reps on the sidelines between series that he's playing to get some to get a better look at things and evaluate things and learn from situations that he's seeing on the field, but also seeing how someone like Devontae Smith would handle those situations. So I think Notre Dame needs him. It was surprising that Devontae Smith wasn't included in any injury reports prior to the game, but then wasn't available. So I'll be interested to see what sort of rotation they have between those two when Devontae Smith does get healthy. Another one who's questionable is cornerback Leonard Moore with the left ankle injury. I think we probably both can agree how bad it would be for Notre Dame if he doesn't play. But do we think this ankle injury is something that limits how Notre Dame uses him if he's playing through pain?
I mean, it depends on what pain he can handle, and also if it limits what he can do physically. Can he cut? Can he do all the things that he normally does just with having to tolerate pain? That's the question. And if he doesn't play, what does that look like? You know, they didn't promote Dallas Golden, who is the second string boundary corner. They instead played with Mark Zachary, the fourth, and Christian Gray together. So I would look for that. And I'd also look for maybe a little bit more rotation with Mark Zachary, even if Leonard Moore is out there, just to give him some relief from the pain and relief from having to play the 97 to 100% snaps he plays every game.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would be curious about is if maybe he's a step slower or slightly slower with an ankle injury. Do you have to play him exclusively at the boundary? Is there ways that you could, if he's fully healthy, are there better ways that you can use him to help out other guys and maybe take some of the pressure off Christian Gray, who hasn't had a particularly great start to the season? I wonder if like the versatility potential of Leonard Moore is limited if he is physically limited. So for Notre Dame's sake, hopefully he gets through the ankle issue and it isn't something that nags at him throughout the season. The last questionable person is questionable on the injury report is kicker Noah Burnett with a right hip injury. I got to imagine Notre Dame hopes this isn't a Mitch Jeter situation all over again. I think after last season, there's a little bit of like, oh, wait, hold on. What did you think of the way Marcus Freeman answered who would replace Burnett if he can't play? And I think you asked him that question.
I did ask him that question. Noah Burnett has been 100% on his field goals and extra points. Now, the botched extra point with a bad hold goes down as a botched 2-point conversion, not a botched extra point, since he never got a chance to kick it. They went out and got Eric Schmidt because of this exact situation last year. They said, we need to have a plan B. We need to bring a guy along. The question is Eric Schmidt, who has a powerful leg, more powerful than Noah Burnett, is he more accurate than what we saw in August? Because he can bang them from beyond 50. And my thought is Marcello Diomede, and I've gotten the first name right. I'm probably still butchering the second name, but Marcello has been really good as a kickoff guy, and he's been in games, and I think they probably trust him a little bit more with the field goals that you need to make from, let's say, 45 in, and I don't think his leg is weak. But I think if Notre Dame found themselves needing something over 50 to win a game, I think they may turn to Schmidt just because of the power in his leg. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I was surprised that they don't have a clear answer, and maybe that, I guess.
And they may, he just may not have wanted to say that because he said, we're going to have a competition.
I also wonder if they may, and he's also not worried about it because he thinks Noah Burnett's going to play. Maybe I don't know. I think you could read into it a couple of different ways there. So certainly Notre Dame needs to get that ironed out before it goes into the game on Saturday, even if Noah Burnett goes in healthy, because who knows? I mean, one swing of the leg wrong could put him in a bad spot. I know in the offseason, Marty Biaggi mentioned, Notre Dame special teams coordinator mentioned that Noah Burnett dealt with some issues last year with injuries and being overworked at North Carolina. And so I'm curious if there's any carryover here, if this is similar to what he dealt with previously, and how Notre Dame can help him manage that if it is similar. And even if it's not similar, Notre Dame has to figure out how to get him in the right spot. You would like to think after last season and the struggles that Mitch Jeter had, like probably shelving him to make sure he's okay. If it's questionable at all, maybe the best route. But I don't know that we know enough of specifics about the pain he's in or what he's dealing with and how it would impact his actual kicks. All right, before we get into more defensive talk, I figured we could just hop into questions, and I'm sure there's plenty of defensive questions in here. Eric Swope says, it looks like we have a mystery here in South Bend to solve regarding the Fighting Irish football team. Do we have suspects? Do we have an answer on motive? Looking for answers.
Well, Eric, that's so clever. I'm not sure how to answer that. What I would say, and I'm not going to be able to go to your theme. I'll just have to answer it straight because I'm not as creative on the spot as you are. And you do have a cool first name. And I've told you that before. I think that this is a team that still has the talent to be a college football playoff team. So what's gone wrong? I do think we talked about a little bit, Marcus Freeman not identifying that the defense was a problem before they got into September, and then the depths to which the defense is a problem in September. I think that's where it starts. There's been other elements, the offensive line coming along a little bit more slowly than we thought and Marcus Freeman thought, but I still think that this is a team where there's not chemistry problems, there's not leadership problems, and I think this is a team that has the potential to run off 10 wins in a row. But if they do not fix the defense quickly, they're going to run into some really good offenses that will make it not 2 in the loss column, but more than that.
Yeah, I think the phrasing is more to the cleverness of the question, but in terms of like motive, I'm not like I don't think there's any ill intent from anyone. But I do think like if you speaking in motive terms, I think it's probably misguided evaluations in terms of what Notre Dame has on its roster, and in terms of what Notre Dame needs in terms of doing on the field in terms of its scheme. What does it need to do with those players that it has to be able to be its most successful? It feels like there have been too many misjudgments there that have led to where Notre Dame's at. And a credit to the teams that Notre Dame is playing. I think the teams Notre Dame has played have taken advantage of Notre Dame's mistakes and figured out how to expose them in various ways.
Well, let me ask you this, Tyler, along those same lines, and Eric, you can chime in too. If Al Golden 4.0 was the defensive coordinator, what would Notre Dame's record be?
Oh, I mean, I think I would be silly to suggest different than 2-0. He has too much of a proven track record. I don't think that the difference would be this vast. Even if the defense wasn't as good, it would be hard for me to imagine it being this bad. And I don't know what else to say other than that. I think that's how I feel. What do you feel the same?
I do. I mean, and I think his evaluations would have been good too, because he knew these players.
Right.
I mean, he had seen them for 3 years. Now, again, I didn't ask you Al Golden 1.0 because Al Golden had some issues in the first few games and learning the players and learning the college offenses and so forth that he didn't have problems with in years 2 and 3. But yeah, I would have said 2-0 for sure.
Yeah, and getting back to the evaluations part of it, Chris Ash in the preseason said something to the effect like this is the best defense I've been around since the 2014 Ohio State team, right? And that team won a national championship. So that how does he account for that take versus what we've seen on the field? And I'm not sure the next time we'll talk to Chris Ash to get his answer to that.
See, and that was our fault as the media for requesting. I didn't request it, and I don't. We all kind of chime in on different ideas, and sometimes they're really good. But not having the coordinators on a weekly basis, I think, was a big missed opportunity for us that we asked for.
Yeah, I do have some regret in terms of not pushing back more on it when it was announced as being that way. And so I don't know what if it will change. I would at some point feel like why does someone else have to answer questions about it? Granted, Marcus Freeman has to answer for everything because it's his program, but
and I'm not sure Chris would give us a deep dive on some things, but at least we'd have a chance to ask those questions. I think Mike Denbrock does do a pretty good job of giving us a deep dive without giving away the game plan and trade secrets. I think we usually get some insightful. We do have Gino Gaduli this week, which will be interesting, talking to the quarterbacks coach, but I'm sure there's going to be some weeks where that rotation doesn't line up with what we really need to know about the team.
All right, next question is from Dynasty ISP. How many games can the defense struggle before Freeman fires Ash and temporarily promotes Mickens?
I don't think that would happen within the first season, and I don't think that would, no matter what's going on with Chris Ash. I mean, Marcus Freeman hired him. Marcus Freeman was happy with him in the spring, happy with him in the summer, happy with him in August, and then so many games in the season, unless there's some misconduct, I don't think you fire him. Then you're one coach down. Then you're coaching a team with one less coach. So you've got to promote somebody. Now, could you change some responsibilities kind of clandestinely? I suppose you could do that. But I think right now, the best answer with regards to coaching is Marcus Freeman getting more involved in collaborating with Chris Ash rather than putting him in the corner without a supper.
Yeah, I think the clandestine.
And I get your frustration, Believe me.
The sort of secret or like behind doors demotion would be the more likely result than like a public firing. I think in the first season, I think if it came to the point where Marcus Freeman felt it needed to happen, I think he would probably become the defensive play caller, and then sort of take that responsibility away from Chris Ash and figure out a way to use him and help the team. I like temporarily giving that responsibility to Mike Mickens. That doesn't seem like an answer to me because Mike Mickens doesn't have experience doing that.
And Mike Mickens still has a voice in defensive meetings.
Sure. Yeah, true. But I mean, so does Marcus Freeman too. I think I just think there would be more, at least personally, I would have more faith in Marcus Freeman play calling on the defense than I would Mike Mickens in the middle of the season. I just feel like that would be very unfair to Mike Mickens, someone who wants to become a defensive coordinator, to be thrown into a bad spot like that. I just don't know that it would be a good situation for Mike Mickens to inherit. Scott Fegan says, I really don't like to second guess Mike Denbrock.
No, he corrected it. Marcus
Freeman on his decisions, but the Ash hire looks a lot like the VVG hire by Kelly. Do you see Freeman getting more involved in play calling and scheme design?
I don't think play calling necessarily. I think in terms of meetings, in terms of coaching, in terms of wrinkles to the scheme, yes, I could see that being a possibility. I don't think he's going to call the plays unless things really went in a negative direction from this point forward, more than they have. I just don't see that happening. Does it look like BVG? I mean, the one thing that was really bad about BVG, and I wrote about this in my Behind the Ballot column, believe it or not, was for Sunday was Brian Van Gorder came in, and Brian Kelly had worked with him before and thought, and this is a guy that won the Broyles Award before a decade before he came to Notre Dame, but he didn't evolve with the game. And Brian Kelly remembered the Brian Van Gorder, who was a dominant defensive force until the game evolved past him and he didn't catch up with the college game. I don't think Chris Ash is behind on the college game, but I think his reentry into college after 5 years being in the pros, or 4 years being in the pros, I think is a little bit steeper than maybe both Chris Ash and Marcus Freeman thought. But BVG was the kind of guy that dug in his heels. He wasn't going to listen to people. And I think Chris Ash impresses me as a guy that's willing to collaborate, willing to listen to ideas. And so this is where I have hope. Now, Purdue will inform me whether I'm right or wrong on that, because I expected improvement this week and didn't see it. So I'm 0 for 1.
Yeah, if Notre Dame struggles mightily against Purdue's offense, say Devontae Smith doesn't play and Leonard Moore doesn't play, then I was like, well, maybe they might struggle a little bit without those guys. But like if Notre Dame is healthy in the secondary, it still struggles with its pass defense as much as it did against Texas A&M. I think that would be a serious concern and more cause for Marcus Freeman to get even more involved. One thing that I was thinking of today was, I don't remember the exact quote that Marcus Freeman said, but it was something to the effect of,
Nobody knows the exact quotes of Marcus Freeman today. Just kidding. It's an inside joke.
We don't have. He's described it as like it wasn't a change of the defensive system didn't change, and I would just be curious. Like I would be.
Well, yeah, and what the context there was, people were trying to pin him down. Is it Marcus? Is it Al Golden's defense still? Is it is Chris Ash's defense?
Right.
And then what Tyler's saying.
Yeah, and so I would like, okay, Marcus, when you say the defensive system hasn't changed, what do you mean by that? When you say, like, as reporters, we might think of the system differently as like from the coaches. Like system might just mean like, hey, these are our personnel packages. This is our philosophy. But does that mean like the amount of zone coverages that we're calling, we want to lean on that more. Is that included in system? I think people can view it different ways, so I would be curious to hear a more detailed explanation to that if you would be willing to give it, because I think that
I think he will if and when the defense is better. I don't think he wants to give that now because it implies then Chris Ash brought in something you got to hold your nose about. But I do think coaches, they tend to say we want to have continuity, and Brian Kelly said that when he was looking, and then he found Marcus Freeman, who had a very different system than Clark Lee, and kind of tried to sell it as similar, and we all knew it wasn't. And then Marcus Freeman to Al Golden, he also wanted to find somebody that at least was 4-3, and Al Golden used to not be. He was a 34 guy, but a lot of differences there, even in the terminology, more than that were advertised. But I think coaches have to coach what they believe in, and to just hand them, it's kind of like giving somebody, this is a bad example because you guys don't write stories like we do, but Tyler James saying, "Oh, here's the stuff. Now you write the story. You didn't do any of the interviews. You didn't watch anything. You didn't watch the game. Now write the story." I mean, I probably could, but it wouldn't be as good as Tyler's from watching the story and asking the questions himself. And maybe not even under optimum conditions. Tyler's pretty damn good.
Joe Long says, we don't really know why Mickens hasn't been given the reins. Maybe he isn't up to knowing every position group duty or situational calls.
But I think he is learning that. I think, when I talked to Greg McElroy at the beginning of this year, Greg, I think, is one of the best analysts on any network. And we talked about, what do you think about Mickens not getting the shot at it? And his thoughts were, you know what, I would have done the same thing if I were Marcus Freeman, but this is a real opportunity for Mike Mickens to experience someone else's system and learn more of the position group responsibilities, keep working at his craft, so that when his opportunity comes, and it probably will come after this season if Notre Dame's secondary gets his stuff together, then he'll be ready for that, whether it's at Notre Dame or somewhere else. And it may have to be somewhere else, and then he comes back to Notre Dame.
Tom McLaughlin says Freeman has to stop using execution. What do you think of that?
I think there's times where we would hope that the explanation was different, but I will give him credit. He didn't try to make a bad pun out of it like Brian Kelly did in the Florida State game a few years ago, when ironically his defensive coordinator was Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, I mean, execution is a bit of a catch. Also, is consistency. With
Charlie Weiss's era, it was fundamentals and techniques.
Yeah, and so it's being specific without being specific. And I think, obviously, in certain situations, we want to know, well, who isn't executing. But unless there's a specific play we're asking about, the odds of a coach saying publicly, yeah, especially in college football, they're not going to single out a player.
Brian Kelly did, well. And people didn't like it.
Yeah, people got mad. The Sam Mustipher one, is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, and some other times. I mean,
yeah,
he did at times. He'd say, "Well, yeah, was this so and so?"
Yeah, and so I just don't think that that's what Marcus Freeman is going to do. If there's specific instances, if we were to ask him, I don't think he got asked specifically what Drake Bowen is supposed to do on that play, on the game-winning touchdown, to prevent that from happening. I think he probably would give us the details, but he's not gonna offer up specifically Drake Bowen needs to do a better job of covering a tight end wheel route or whatever. Jeff Stevens says, I watched the Freeman presser and I took a shot for every execution and consistency. Or if I took a shot for every execution and consistency, I'd be on the floor drunk in 10 minutes.
Well, the good news is, Jeff, you can do that at Notre Dame Stadium now because they're selling alcohol.
They didn't. I didn't see if we could buy any for the press conference today. So maybe that would have helped us with questions.
I am really curious about how the Notre Dame brass views it, and once we get to less consequential parts of the season, that's something to revisit, because I talked to some people that were at the game, and they were sitting around Texas A&M fans. Of course, they're going to blame it on them, but the people that had that much antifreeze in them from the morning all the way to and keep going at night, it was a problem in some sections of the stadium.
I don't know to what gets the credit, but I did think the crowd was very loud, impacted the game in Notre Dame's favor at times. What was it? There was a lot of false starts for Texas A&M. I think the crowd gets some credit for that. I thought like the final defensive sequence for Notre Dame, that was as loud as I've heard it in Notre Dame Stadium. And I've covered almost every home game since 2012. I did miss the Stanford goal line stand. I had been told it got very loud when that happened. People erupted in that, but I thought the crowd was great on Saturday night. The Steel Horseman said, was Tyler Buckner and Kenny Minchie really laughing when the other team scored?
I have no idea. I don't have any point of reference with that. So
I haven't gone back and watched that aspect of it. I know people have mentioned that they kept showing Tyler Buckner after the dropped snap on the extra point attempt, and I think there were some smiles and laughter. I don't know exactly the timing of it because I haven't gone back and tracked that, but I think like people cope with things differently, and it's probably a tough spot to like. I don't know. Would you feel any better if he was crying? I don't know that like. I'm sure people were trying to lift his spirits and make sure that he was okay after that. So I think it would be near the bottom of my list of concerns in terms of the facial expressions those guys were having on the sidelines.
At the top of my concerns was I was in charge of turning in a game story as soon as the game ended, and was at that point deciding, does Notre Dame win this game? Does Notre Dame not win this game? Because you have a lot of changes to make if you're wrong. And guess who was wrong?
All right, Outbound said, what happened to all the reports of this defense flying around, only giving tight windows to throw in and playing loose? Were they all lies?
I don't think they were all lies. We did not see the team practice after August, maybe 14th, somewhere in there. So maybe that happened afterwards. But when we saw in the little bit that we saw, again, we saw them on the first day, not in pads. And then we had individual periods where we did not see competitive football after that. Now the coaches seemed to express that this was happening, and perhaps again there was maybe a better pass rush. I mean, I think that's where Marcus Freeman got the impression that the defensive line would be good out of the gate, was because the defensive line performed well in the preseason. And so and we've seen most of this group perform to a very, very high standard in pass defense last year, as a matter of fact, when they were number one in the country. So number one to number 103 is a big drop. Even when you go against two pretty good quarterbacks in Carson Beck and Marcel Reed, I think that's way more than you would expect Notre Dame to drop in a couple of games.
Yeah, I mean, there can be mirages that come from camp. I think the familiarity you're playing with, like Notre Dame's Notre Dame's defenders are familiar with Notre Dame's offense more than Chris Ash would be familiar with Notre Dame's offense, just because they practice, so many of them have practiced against their teammates. So maybe there's some of that. I mean, just think about listen, CJ Carr. I mean, they went late into the preseason not knowing for sure if he would be the starting quarterback. I'm not after watching him from two games, well, yeah, he should have he should be the starting quarterback. Why? Granted, maybe Kenny Minchie could do just as well as CJ Carr has done. But CJ Carr looks like someone that's oh yeah, why was there any question that he should be the starting quarterback? So I think there's there can be a truth to that. I would also wonder maybe there were more things. Maybe the game specific planning that's happened for Miami and A&M have been part of the issues. Maybe the defense was playing better when it was just doing more base things in terms of its installation of the defense. and that was allowing it to sort of fly around in practices, and that's not necessarily translated to the games. Rip Jewel says, whoops, sorry, clicked it too many times. Is Marcus Freeman Jerry Faust 2.0? Nice guy, but a bit lost in big moments.
Whoa. No. I mean, emphatically no. There's nothing that's even similar about. I mean, this is a guy that just came within 11 points of a national championship last year. Jerry Faust didn't sniff even getting close. Would have never made a 48 team playoff. No, there's not even a question there. That's really kind of insulting, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know if Rip Jules didn't have access to electronics in December and January. Maybe that's what.
Or maybe he's just having fun with us to see if he can get under my skin.
Jimmy Page says, "Why is Christian Gray playing when he's hurt?"
I thought he had. I thought he came back right after missing one play, so I'm not sure that he was injured. He wasn't listed on the injury report today.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the difference would be he's hurt, but he's not injured. He's has played through pain that has caused him to leave the game.
Okay, I think they put a shoulder harness on him at some point, or a shoulder. But I mean, I would think that their thought is a guy with that much experience with the shoulder harness on is better than a true freshman that hasn't played against two of the better wide receivers in the country. So I think that would be the rationale there. Not that he played well.
Yeah, Jimmy has said rumors have it's been hurt for a while. I think.
Was it in the Miami game? He came out in the Miami game.
He came out in the Miami game, but it was for a throat issue.
Okay, throat.
He's clearly dealing with a shoulder issue of some sort. That's why he's wearing a harness. You don't wear a harness for no reason.
It's not a fashion statement.
Yeah. It's not like this looks cool. I don't think that's why he's wearing it. But obviously, there's a belief that it's not limiting him to the point where he cannot play and be one of Notre Dame's two best cornerbacks. I mean, for as well as Mark Zachary played in the preseason, like it is very limited. Now it's very unfair that he's been thrown in bad situations, but he hasn't exactly looked great in his limited reps off the bench when either Gray or Moore have gone down. So Notre Dame needs Christian Gray and needs him to play better, and that's why he's playing. Let's see, which did I not get to here? Scott Fegan said the secondary minus Moore looks terrible. How many drop picks, how many breaks in coverage, and missed tackles did they commit? I'm sure you can imagine we don't have the actual numbers for that. Do we have other options on the bench? That's what I figured we maybe could address. Do you think there's options on the bench that Notre Dame has in its secondary that could play more moving forward?
Well, I mean, you've seen some of them. Carson Hobbs has come in for Devontae Smith. Ben Minnick would be behind him. The two backup corners are true freshmen, Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary. The safeties, I think you've seen a lot of them. Tay Johnson played a lot of snaps in that game. Marcus Freeman was really high on his performance from Saturday. I've been in his corner since I saw him in the spring. He's my football crush. And I think he may start on Saturday with Adon Schuler being out for the first half because of the targeting carrying over to the first half of the next game. Although if you go straight up and down on the depth chart, it would be Luke Talich, but I could see Tay Johnson getting a lot of those snaps in the first half as well. I mean, I think the group, we're going to see more of all those guys as you're not going against the best quarterback in the country or best quarterbacks in the country, but there's some really good quarterbacks ahead pretty quick. I mean, Green at Arkansas is really, really good. And Mayava at USC is really, really good. And there's some guys on the November schedule that are way up there in passing efficiency, including Holstein from Pitt. So, but I think as the season goes along, you'll see a little bit more of those guys rotate in. And again, I think a lot of the problems are lack of pass rush. Notre Dame, and Jack tried to do it in total. Jack Sobel did a great job, but he did it in total sacks and total tackles for loss. And in per game, Notre Dame is 132nd out of 134 in tackles for loss, 131st in sacks. So they're down in the bottom 5 in both of those categories per game, not total, because somebody pointed out, well, they've only played 2 games and other teams have played 3. No, this is per game.
Those are not numbers you want to associate with.
And it's not like Miami and Texas A&M are 1 and 2 in sacks allowed, fewest sacks allowed. Miami is 43rd.
All right. Jeff Stevens says Logan Thomas blocked the punt and is playing fast on special teams. Should he get more snaps on defense?
If he can get his weight up to 240, I would say yes. But I think he's a situational niche guy on defense. I don't think he's their best options there right now. I think they have some good options. I think you will see better versions of Botello and Boubacar as they shake the rust of being out for a year and not having spring practice and not having most of last season. I think those two will come to the forefront. And you have Burnham, you have Bryce Young, you have all the killer bees. But I do like Logan Thomas, and I know the coaching staff does. And when he gets the weight on to be an asset in the run game as well, I think you'll see more of him. You'll see him next year.
Yeah. Not to take away from what Logan Thomas has done, but like no one blocked him on the blocked punt, right? Like if he gets an opportunity to rush the quarterback where no one's blocking him, that would be great.
But he has been a good special teams player for the last 2 years.
And he's an important asset there. I think there are questions about in terms of like his weight and how much he could get pushed around in terms of being a defensive lineman right now. So maybe there are ways that they can incorporate his talents into the defense, but I think it would be very niche roles right now. There was a question. Rip Jewell said, can Angeli light up the current Notre Dame secondary when Syracuse comes to town?
If there's no pass rush and there is the coverage that they've had to this point, maybe. Steve Angeli has got sacked a lot. He's also put up some big numbers against teams that aren't Tennessee. And he's playing well, and I think people are pretty happy for him. But I would expect Notre Dame, if we're having this same discussion in November, then Chris Ash's time at Notre Dame won't be very long.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how
that's the second to last game of the season.
I'm curious to see how Steve Angeli does against better competition. He's being given a lot of opportunities to throw the ball. I think better defenses, if he's going to be back there throwing the ball so much, will have some answers for that. I mean, they beat UConn, who lost to Delaware this past weekend, and then Colgate was his most recent opponent. Well, but I think that wasn't necessarily Angeli's fault that they barely beat him. I think he threw for a lot of yards in that game. Their defense isn't very good.
It's not fault that UConn lost to Delaware.
All right. I think we've hit most of the questions that aren't similar questions to what we've already discussed. And we're almost to the bottom of the hour or top of the hour again here. So I'll go through some questions that I had on here maybe throughout our thing, Eric. Curious. We haven't talked much about Purdue because everything is very Notre Dame focused right now, but is there anything Notre Dame can do against Purdue that would change your perception of the defense?
Well, it would, not definitively change my view, but I would want to see incremental improvement. So if I saw some sacks and tackles for loss, I think that's a good sign. If I saw them holding a quarterback below, let's say 110 in pass efficiency, I'd say, okay, that's pretty good. If I saw the linebackers looking like what I expect them to look like coming out of preseason, I think that is. Purdue is not an overwhelming offense, but they scored 17 on USC. They were in a quasi-competitive game after a long delay. so yeah, I do think that there is. I mean, it's not conclusions, but I think there could be some good signs that you could take encouragement from. How about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's to me. I don't know that anything could change my perception of the defense. I do think like if the defense plays well, it would maybe open up my mind more to the idea of there being improvement. If Notre Dame goes out and plays really well, I don't think it guarantees anything about the long-term sustainability of its defense. It's going to have to put together a number of different things to really change my perception right now. We haven't talked about the offense very much. I'm curious, what did you see from Notre Dame's offense on Saturday that suggests it is moving in the right direction towards reaching its potential, as Marcus Freeman would maybe describe it?
Well, I mean, 40 points against the SEC defense, that's impressive. And I thought we saw more people get involved. I thought the offensive line played better. We saw multiple tight ends. We saw some of the wide receivers, like Will Pauling, make some catches. And we saw CJ Carr continue to make strides forward. You know, his pass efficiency ranking is in the low 140s, which you say, well, gosh, that's 66th in the country, but that's 15 points ahead of Arch Manning. That's about 24 points ahead of Cade Klubnik. It's 22 ahead of Garrett Nussmeier. There are a lot of good quarterbacks that would love to have that 142.1 ranking. It's higher than any of Riley Leonard's seasons, including last season at Notre Dame. And the 293 yards he threw against an SEC defense is more than any Notre Dame quarterback in his Notre Dame Stadium starting debut since 1966. Terry Hanratty had 304 yards against Purdue. Marcus Freeman had really high praise for not only how CJ Carr handled the 0-2 start, the leadership he's shown, but that the moments haven't been too big for him in the games. And he said today he's got a really high ceiling, and I needed to tell him that. And I do think that CJ Carr's upward trajectory is going to figure heavily into how this season plays out.
Yeah, I would echo much of what you said about CJ Carr, so I'll hit on a couple other things. I thought the commitment to the running game was appreciated from my perspective. It wasn't always successful, but I thought Mike Denbrock stuck with it, and it paid dividends with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. 35 carries for 162 yards and 3 touchdowns between the two. That was a promising sign, and I think probably like, okay, why couldn't this have been done maybe a little bit more against Miami? I think I like the rapport that CJ Carr and Malachi Fields seem to be growing into. 5 catches for 77 yards. I know he missed him on a number of other targets. I think he was, at least in the official box score, had 11 targets. I think that's a good sign of how much CJ Carr trusts him. They can improve on connecting better on some of those back shoulder throws and stuff like that. But I think there's good progress being made there. And there's just some individual play calls that I really liked, like the Raritan reception, some creativity there, the long catch he had, the Love touchdown reception to get him open like that. You would think it would be hard to get Jeremiah Love that open because someone should always know where he's at. But Notre Dame schemed that up in a good way. And Jeremiah Love made a nice snag of a slightly overthrown ball by CJ Carr. Is there anything that we haven't hit on that you want to make sure that we get to before we get out of here, Eric, since I've been controlling the show?
Well, I wanted to ask you about the recruiting weekend. I mean, this was the largest recruiting weekend in some aspects that Notre Dame has had. Now it's been the class, we used to talk about the class in progress. This is the 2027. So it's kids that are juniors. Was that a good idea to have that many kids if the coaching staff could spend individual time with them or not? And B, do you think the 0-2 start has shaken any of the guys that are committed or looking at Notre Dame?
Yeah, and I threw the question that Anne-Marie Donnelly submitted before the show started that was recruiting related. We appreciate that, Anne. Yeah, I think it was a good call to bring that many guys in. I think the atmosphere was great. That was the type of experience you want to give recruits in Notre Dame Stadium. Obviously, you would hope it would be a win and not a loss. But they're going to remember being at that game because of the way it played out, the way the atmosphere was, and everything to that. I think they'll remember that aspect of it more than Notre Dame lost by 1 point. I don't think that is going to make a big difference. I think if the defense continues to struggle, there could be long-term consequences to that. But I don't think the 0-2 start specifically will turn kids away. I know Mike Singer and Kyle Kelly have done a great job of reaching out to Notre Dame's commits, and most of them have responded and saying that they're locked in. They're not wavering in their commitment. Obviously, being locked in on September 15th is different than being locked in December when it's time to sign. But it does seem like things are fine. There aren't waves being made in a negative way with Notre Dame's committed guys, and I think they're getting the attention of a lot of young players, and especially with it being so many 2027 guys, I don't think it hurts you to have so many and that you can't spend a lot of time with them because it's still early in many of those kids' recruitment, so it's not like this is your last chance to talk to them before they make a decision. So I wouldn't be too concerned about how you balance what amount of time Marcus Freeman can spend with so many of those talented players. I think the atmosphere and being here for a big game like that and the things that they can do before a night game in terms of getting them around folks at Notre Dame are all beneficial for the program. And a shout out to Mike Singer and Kyle Kelly. They have great coverage over at blueandgold.com, talking to guys, both who are committed in and some of those 2027 targets. So check that out if you haven't already.
All right, appreciate you. Yeah. Oh,
I'll
we're
get
not
this one
going
more.
yet.
I got one more question here from Justin ND Sniper I want to throw in. We have Carr likely for 2 years, maybe 3 if he decides to stay till he's a senior. Is it worth the risk of wasting his talent in hopes that Ash develops as a defensive coordinator over the next couple of years?
Okay, you're going to have to answer that question because I don't understand it. What would be the alternative? Having him redshirt when he's already redshirted? I don't understand.
No. I think he's saying you got to get rid of Ash so CJ Carr can get.
Well, I mean, you have this whole year. Let's let the year play out. Then you can evaluate whether that's wasting his talent. I think he's part of the solution. I get what you're saying now, but I mean, there's nothing that you can do with Chris Ash right now that's going to help determine whether CJ Carr is a waste or not. I think at the end of the season, yeah, you can make that decision, and you could certainly make that decision after the 26th season as well. Okay, yeah, good question. I just am an airhead. I didn't have enough coffee.
Yeah, before the season we did some. I don't know if it was a point counterpoint or some sort of thing about the expectations for Notre Dame and what would you deem a successful season. And to me, I was willing to lower the bar in terms of like winning multiple playoff games. If Notre Dame knows, hey, CJ Carr is our quarterback, we have a stud, we have a guy that can win a national championship for us with the right pieces around him. If you learn that this season, I think that can take some of the pain away from what's going on in terms of the defense. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily fix the issues that you have on defense. You got to figure that out. But I think CJ Carr's performance this season and his growth and the belief in what he can be can sort of take some of that pain away. Go ahead, Eric.
The column that I wrote that's up on blueandgold.com right now is right down this alley. And the thing about it is where I compared it to the 2005 Notre Dame team, and there's some parallels there and there's some not. I mean, Brady Quinn was a junior. He was a Heisman finalist. But Brady Quinn was able to camouflage a lot of that team's weaknesses until they played Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl, where that defense gave up a school record number of yards in that game against Ohio State. But that still was a top 10 team because of the quarterback. I think CJ Carr can be part of the solution that gives a little bit more wiggle room to the defense's growing pains. But the defense is going to have to get better, especially if they make the playoff. They're going to have to fix a lot of these problems. But I think CJ Carr's trajectory is part of the solution.
Yeah, I I'm interested to see how he continues to develop. That'll be it from us tonight. I know we had a bunch of questions coming in here towards the end, but we've been here for an hour. And our teammate Mike Singer's over live on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel with Robbie Toma right now. So head over there as we wrap up. Those guys will continue to talk about probably a lot of the things we talk about, but maybe some different perspectives. We appreciate everyone tuning in to us tonight. And we will see you guys with a Third and Gold podcast later this week.